What up, what up, what up? Welcome back to Sam Dunks, the weekly NBA show over at SlabStox. I'm your host, Sam. Today, we are in the midst of the NBA Finals. Tomorrow, as I record this, is Game 6. Hopefully, the last game of the series. But we're not going to talk about the NBA Finals today. Instead, we're turning our attention to the next most pressing issue on the basketball calendar. That's the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo. I think they're still calling it the 2020 Olympics, which kick off later this week with the basketball tournament beginning right away on Saturday. Will the Olympics affect card prices? What type of players might see gains? Who might see some losses in the cards markets? We're going to be trying answering all those questions today, so let's just jump right into it. The Olympic opening ceremonies are this Friday, July 23rd, and then the preliminary round of the Olympics men's basketball tournament tips off this Saturday, July 24th. Now, there are 12 teams playing in the tournament. They're grouped into groups of 4. There's 3 groups of them, so Group A, Group B, Group C. The USA, which I assume most of my listeners are interested in, USA is in Group A. They're joined by Iran, France, and the Czech Republic. As far as groups that you want to be in if you're the USA, this is most likely the best case scenario. Group B is comprised of Australia. I know we have listeners out there in Australia, Germany, Italy, and Nigeria, and that probably would be considered the group of death in this tournament. You know, Australia is always very strong. They are again this year. Nigeria also is a team that beat the USA in that exhibition match just a week or so ago. They're well coached. They have a number of NBA players on their roster, fully capable team. And then Italy's no slouch either. Traditionally a pretty strong team. They figure to be good once more. Germany also has some guys. Then Group C, Argentina, traditionally good. Same with Spain, always a contender. Then we have Japan with the home Olympics boost. And then Slovenia, led by some guy called Luka Doncic. I'm sure you've heard of him. Should be just a really, really good tournament overall. Now, each team will play a total of 3 games in their preliminary round. They're facing off against each other team in the grouping. After that round is complete, the top 2 teams in each group, along with the 2 better third seeds, will advance on. So that means the 4th place finishers in each group, as well as the worst third seed in the entire tournament, they'll just be out of the tournament permanently at that point. The groups then kind of stop to matter after that point. It'll just become a single elimination tournament right up until the gold medal game, with the gold medal winning team needing to play 6 straight games in order to get there. That's a bit of a shorter tournament than in years past, but we'll still get 6 games out of the best national team in the world. Should be plenty to be excited about in the coming weeks. Now, will the USA win it all? That's a good question, and honestly, sometimes the team from the USA will simply just not click, and that always becomes rather embarrassing, especially for a USA team that, going back to the Olympics and the Dream Team, kind of introduced the game of basketball around the world. In recent years, we've kind of scuffled a little bit. Now, that could certainly happen again this year, that they do not win the gold. It's definitely a talented roster, but certainly still a possibility. The roster as it currently stands, it's on the screen if you're watching, but it's comprised of Bam Adebayo, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Jeremy Grant, Draymond Green, Drew Holiday, Keldon Johnson, Zach LaVine, Damian Lillard, JaVale McGee, Chris Middleton. I just love that JaVale McGee is one of the guys representing America. JaVale McGee, Chris Middleton, and Jason Tatum. No idea what's going to happen with Booker, Holiday, and Middleton. Obviously, they're all still in the NBA Finals, with the NBA Finals pushing right up against the Olympics. I suppose, although I have no idea how this works, I suppose they could potentially not show up, or maybe just show up a little late to the tournament. Again, no idea what's going to be happening there. We'll have to wait and see what happens there. So a talented roster, certainly. Maybe not quite as talented as in years past. I think it's better than the disappointing 2004 team, most likely. My gut reaction as I look up and down this roster is, they're definitely going to be able to score. You have Booker, Durant, LaVine, Lillard, Middleton, Tatum. They're all wired to score. Every single one of those guys should have no problem at all creating their own shots. And part of the difficulty will be finding someone who's going to be willing to take a step back and facilitate on offense, direct the offense instead of looking out for his own scoring. Yeah, that's not in Devin Booker's wheelhouse. That's not something that Zach LaVine's able to do. Damian Lillard probably going to be the de facto lead point guard in this group, but on a team that's not lacking scoring, is he going to be willing to take a step back and really just lead rather than hunt for his own buckets? Kind of have my doubts about that. Also, just not a whole ton of defense on this roster in general. There are good defensive players, but there's certainly very little by way of perimeter defense. Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, they'll be bringing that defensive tenacity that we've seen from them in these playoffs, but it's seemingly up in the air if they'll even show up and how much they'll play. I'm sure they're going to be dog-tired after the playoffs are finally done. And again, I have no idea what's going to happen there. Tatum, he's another guy that can defend out on the perimeter, but otherwise really not much out on the wings or at the point of attack. Then in the big man grouping, we have Draymond Green, Bam Adebayo, JaVale McGee. Forgive me if I'm not super enthusiastic about that big man tandem there. Really Draymond and Bam, probably the best two facilitators in this overall group. So just kind of a weird roster for the USA this time around. I don't know where the best betting odds are on the internet. I've never placed a wager on sports before, but I did pull up the DraftKings betting odds, and the USA is the pretty heavy favorites at minus 425. They're followed then by Australia, so Australia is the second heaviest favorites at plus 900. They're followed then by Spain, Slovenia, France, Argentina, Nigeria, Italy, Czech Republic, Germany, Japan, and then Iran bringing up the rear. That's the order. The USA kind of has to be the favorite just on the basis of the star power that they have. Most of the other teams, they just can't boast that type of star power. Some of them have the top end talent. Even some of them have, very premier NBA players, but no other country has the top to bottom NBA all-star caliber players that the USA can boast. Might not really matter, as we've seen time and time again, that the team element in international basketball simply just matters a whole lot more than it does in the NBA. Take, for instance, the Canadian national team, which was bounced from the Tokyo Games by the Czech Republic just the other day. They were led by Andrew Wiggins, Dwight Powell, Trey Lyles, Corey Joseph, Luguentz Dort, my guy, RJ Barrett, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and they were coached by Nick Nurse. So not on the USA's level of star power or anything really close to that, but still certainly a legitimate team. And yet they lost to a Czech team that is led by exactly one NBA player, that being Tomas Satoransky. No disrespect to Satoransky. I really like him as a player. I love what he brings as a point guard. But if you were to stack those two teams against each other on paper, most people are probably going to assume that Canada wins. But in international ball, team cohesiveness just really matters a whole lot more. So many of these teams have played multiple games per year, and going back years, they've been practicing with each other in the off season. Team cohesiveness, that's huge in FIBA and international ball. There's a lot more ball movement on offense in the international game. The ISO heavy offense that many of the best NBA players favor simply does not do as much in the Olympics. For one thing, zone defense is completely legal by FIBA rules. There's no such thing as defensive 3 seconds. Players can camp out on defense if they so desire, which sort of neutralizes a lot of the spacing that NBA rules create. Additionally, the court is smaller, not by much, but by a few feet in either direction, which again just sort of limits the free space that NBA ISO scoring requires and that players seek to operate in. On top of all that, hunting for fouls, that just really doesn't pay off in the international game. And you might have seen the clips from the Nigeria-USA exhibition from the other day. NBA stars doing what we've grown accustomed to, which is driving the vicinity of a defender, rise up for three, and then appear to get shot by a sniper as they come down. And well, you know what? That type of thing just doesn't really fly in FIBA. There's only 2 refs on the court versus the 3 in the NBA. There are only 5 fouls to give versus the 6 in the NBA, and it's just a much more physical game. The ticky-tack flop type of fouls that sadly we've grown accustomed to watching the NBA, they're just rarely called. For all of these reasons, sad as it is to say, this USA team will be vulnerable in these Olympics. Now, as far as cards are concerned, we know that so much of value is really driven by hype. It's driven by media coverage and how the public perceives a given player. If the USA was to win this tournament, I could envision Damian Lillard as being a big winner in card value. He's just got the type of mentality that people really love, wear USA across his chest and go carry the team on his back. That's the type of thing I could see him doing. He has that type of scoring prowess that just shines in the highlights. And if we win, Lillard's simply going to have a big part to play in the whole game. If Jason Tatum can elevate his game in international play after a somewhat disappointing year, that could go a long way in repairing his value after this past year, which was seen as, kind of a down year for the Celtics and for Tatum's value overall. Devin Booker, he's another player that I could see shining. And this roster is just filled with a lot of pretty streaky shooters, but Devin Booker, and he can be streaky too, but he can also certainly fill it up from all three levels. And he's still young enough that I think a strong showing at the Olympics can really be a boost to his stock. If the USA does not secure the gold, I think that would strongly affect one guy in particular, and that's Kevin Durant. And you can just hear all the questions now. Would this have happened if this was LeBron's team? Kevin Durant will never be as good as LeBron, blah, 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 whatever. This being KD's time to shine without LeBron, without Steph, without some of the other guys that he's shared the international spotlight with in years past. Anything less than a gold will certainly bring out a lot of criticism against him. And all of that after a playoffs where he really just shined brightly as the best player alive. And it's just some of the stuff to think about as we move forward. And we can go take a quick look at some of these guys over on our SlabStox Pro platform to see what their markets have been doing lately. Let's do that right now. So here on the SlabStox Pro platform, I'm going to be looking up Damian Lillard. We'll pull up his base Prism PSA 10 rookie card. Looking back over, let's just say 6 months, we see a peak there in March as things started getting exciting as they were beefing up heading into the playoffs, and then things have really just dropped off for him since then, hitting a low of $710 back on June 23rd. Oh, that's my birthday. Well, back on my birthday, he was around $710, kind of flatlined in this vicinity here, but we also see a little bit of a leap here recently. Just one sale, so all it took was one guy wanting to bid up that price up to that point, so it's kind of hard to say what was going into that at that point. But perhaps it's the thought of these Olympics just right around the corner, trying to buy in with some of the hype that's building around it right now. We could look up Devin Booker's Devin Booker Prism PSA 10 silver rookie card. We'll look at him. Not the most exciting chart in the world, but we see a little bit of rising action through the playoffs here. Back before, just as the playoffs were starting, it's sitting at $4,050. May 23rd is when their first game was played. $4,050, and it rose all the way right up until just last week, or a little over a week ago, $8,800. So basically, or over doubled in price. Incredible. And then July 13th, what is today? July 19th. So a couple losses in a row. Now they're at 3 straight losses, and it did drop by $2,000, although that's, again, only 2 sales, so it's really hard to know what to make of that. But if Devin Booker, if he plays really well, if he lights it up like we've all seen he can do, coming off 2 straight 40-point games, certainly he could be seen as a hero here nationally, a good player to watch. We could look up Kevin Durant's tops. Oh, we'll look at his tops base PSA 10. Not that one. What do I want? His 2007 tops base PSA 10. Just looking over the past 6 months. We'll go a little further. We'll look at a year. We see that climb up in August of last year. Since then, just skyrocketed. Now remember, he was injured last season, so while he built up with the rest of the market, he wasn't doing anything to earn that. It was just that's what the market was doing. Plummets with the rest of the market during the off season, and then he really just skyrocketed, reached all the way up to $12,800 back in February, and then we've seen it just drop off along with the rest of the sell-off of the market. Now, I wouldn't think that he has a ton of mobility, downward mobility here, but if the negative buzz persists around him, if the USA loses the tournament, and this is Kevin Durant's team, I could see that at least flatlining here going forward, or taking a bit of a hit. Of course, if he wins and he does what he did for the Nets in the postseason against the Bucks in particular, 40 points, leaves it all out there on the court, he's also a card where you're looking at this drop from 12,000 all the way to the most recent sale of 37.50. So just basically a third to a quarter of the price of where it was just 4 months ago, 5 months ago. Could be an interesting player to watch. So I think there's a ton of players on this USA team in general that I would be watching and knowing what you know about them, seeing that on the international stage. And if the USA can bring home the gold and we're listening to the Star Spangled Banner while they're on the podium, there's certainly going to be all-time good feelings around this team and around some of these players. Certainly could be some winners there. But it's not exactly the USA team that I'm watching most closely. Let's take a look at some of the guys from other teams around the world. There are a few other guys outside of the USA's roster that I think could shine given the right circumstances if their teams move far enough in the tournament. I'm thinking primarily about young guys that still have a lot to prove that maybe haven't shown a whole ton in the NBA yet, but I think under these circumstances could shine and could increase their card values. First up, we'll look at Nico Mannion of the Golden State Warriors, I was going to say, but he's playing for Team Italy. I have here on the screen his Blue Ice Prism rookie card. Of course, there's just very few PSA 10s of anything Nico Mannion available, but his most recent auction on the raw Blue Ice that I have here was $78. Certainly a very attractive card. You have the nice blue matching of some of the blue accenting on the Warriors jerseys. Also, it's a short printed card. He's been playing fine. He's not the hugest role on this Italy team, but he's been playing chunks of minutes in the qualifiers heading up to the preliminary rounds. 24 minutes against Puerto Rico, 21 points, 3 rebounds, 6 assists, shot 54.5% from the field. Against the Dominican Republic, didn't play a whole ton, 13 minutes, had 8 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, shot 67% from the field, but that was only on 3 shots. And then against Serbia, in that game where they bounced Serbia, a pretty surprising result there. He played 28 minutes, had 24 points, 0 rebounds, 4 assists, didn't shoot great from the field, 41% overall, but 24 points in that surprising win certainly played a big role in getting Italy to the Olympics. Overall, 22 minutes, 18 points, 2 rebounds, 4 assists, and 54% from the field during the course of the qualifying round. Now, Group B, again, that's what I think is probably the group of death. You have Australia very strong, Nigeria very strong, Italy and Germany both relatively strong as well. So no guarantee that Italy's going to come out of that grouping or that they're going to make it very far in this tournament. But I would have to guess that if 3 of the groups are going to have 3 teams qualifying for the quarterfinal, Italy's probably going to be one of them. Wouldn't be surprised at all if a lot of fans are interested in seeing what he does, since he does play for the Golden State Warriors. Certainly a player to watch, in my opinion. Next, we'll head over to SlabStox Pro. We're going to look at a few more players, starting up with Matisse Thybulle of the Australian national team, the Boomers, which is just the greatest team name alive. Matisse Thybulle, let's go take a look at him on SlabStox Pro. We're here on the SlabStox Pro platform looking up, first of all, Matisse Thybulle, his Prism Silver PSA 10 rookie card. Matisse Thybulle, he's always been one of these guys that is so prone to, profiting on hype. Hype really builds around this guy. Ever since his first Summer League appearance, if you remember, his first Summer League showing back in 2019, heading into the 2020 season, just, all-time good feelings around this guy. Of course, it's not recorded here on this chart since there were no PSA 10s available for him at that time. But I have pulled up here the length of his cards chart. So this goes all the way back to April of 2020. We see obviously August that the build up of the overall card market during that time with COVID and everything else leading back into play. We see that general skyrocket, and then of course it fell off. Leading into last season, again, we see that hype building. So here we are, December, we see it peak again. $200 is the peak at that point. Games hadn't even started yet, but this is just what happens with Matisse Thybulle's market. And then games started playing, and it dropped off, and we've kind of leveled off in the $105, $115 range for the past several months. Now, Matisse Thybulle plays for Team Australia. When they played the USA the other day and beat the USA, Matisse Thybulle had a really big part to play in that. He had 12 points on 5 of 7 shooting. He had 2 of 3 shots from downtown that he converted to go along with 3 steals, 2 blocks, 3 assists. Just excellent defense, locking up some of the best players in the world for Team USA. If the Boomers go far in this tournament, a lot of it's going to have to do with Matisse Thybulle. Australia is a great basketball market, great basketball card market. I can see a lot of hype building for Matisse Thybulle. He could potentially be someone to watch, especially sitting as he is, between $75 and $100 over the past couple weeks. Could be a good guy to buy pretty cheap and potentially flip if Australia goes far in this tournament, like I kind of assume that they will. Next player I wanted to look up was Rui Hachimura of the host team, Japan. We're looking at his Silver Prism rookie card. Looking back over the past year, again, August of 2020, we see his market, along with everyone else, skyrocketing $787, which is obscene in my mind. We've seen a generally pretty precipitous fall. We did see, again, just like with Matisse, a rise up to the beginning of the NBA season. And Hachimura, he was fine. It's the second year in the league. It wasn't the greatest season or anything like that. I'm settling in the $175, $150 range over the past couple of months. Again, Rui Hachimura, heading into the Olympics. He's on the host Japanese team. He's one of the flag carriers for Japan, one of the two. There's a male and a female. He was chosen as the male to carry the flag into the Olympics in the opening ceremonies. They're going to be leading the whole brigade. Really could potentially be some good things coming for the Rui Hachimura market. So much of his market is not dictated as much by what he's actually doing on the court, but by what he represents as a Japanese national player. Playing in the United States, being a high first-round draft pick. I'm not like the most in love with his game, but I do think he plays well, better in international play. His game really fits that style, perhaps a bit more. Japan could be a surprising team here coming up in this tournament. Certainly a name to watch. Next, we'll look at a guy that's not an up-and-comer, but that's Luka Doncic. First, we'll pull up his rookie base PSA 10. See what that's been doing. It's not a pretty chart. We'll go back to the beginning of January of this year. Pretty ugly. Of course, his card has just like the highest population numbers that we've pretty much seen in any card. So supply and demand states as the supply rises. Generally speaking, the demand is just not going to be able to catch up with that. So we see that with Luka's market. His Prism base PSA 10 rookie card has dropped 53% right along the way. Just a very steady decline. Has nothing to do with how he's been playing on the court. He's been amazing. Has more to say what his PSA population is. We see similar sort of thing in his Prism Silver rookie card. Let's pull that up here real quick. Looking back over the past year, we see again that run up last August, that not all-time high, but got up to 84.50, dropped down as his season ended, climbed right back up heading into this year, and then it peaked all-time high of $9,700 in March. And then we saw again just that pretty dramatic drop off in the months since. So here we had that sell off in the market, although some cards have been rebounding. Actually, quite a few cards have been rebounding lately, but his card has not begun to rebound yet, sitting at $4,250. Kind of flatlined there for the past several weeks. Now, Luka Doncic is the only player as well. There's a couple guys on the Slovenian national team, but Luka Doncic is going to be facing pretty much exactly what he's faced in his Mavericks career, which is he's basically the only guy, puts the team on his back, and he goes out there and does his best. Now, Luka Doncic, of any player in basketball, is definitely able to do that. He's proven it on the Slovenian national team. He's been excellent. The team's always been very good with him. In fact, in games in which he plays the Serbian national team, the Slovenian national team is 13-0. He's never lost with this national team. He's going into the Olympics. Certainly could be making quite a bit of noise. Definitely a player to watch if Luka puts the team on his back while the whole world is watching, and Slovenia is able to pull this off and win the tournament. I could really see Luka as one of the big winners of this tournament as far as card prices go. So those are my thoughts on the upcoming Olympics. Will they or won't they? Will we see any gains? I don't know. I'm certainly not guaranteeing any of these things to take place, but the Olympics, they only come around every 4 years, and it's been 5 years since the last one. The Olympics, most of the people around the world seem to love them. I certainly do. Rooting for Team USA, but they're fragile this year. Perhaps someone else might slip in and get the gold medal, win the title. And I do think with some of the hype around the Olympics and some of the excitement around the basketball tournament, we could perhaps see some good things in various card markets in a marketplace where we haven't been able to see too many short-term flips in recent weeks, recent months. Perhaps you could see that as we head into the Olympics. But until next time, thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate your time watching this long video. But Olympics are coming. That's exciting. And we'll see you next week.